We were told as kids to stay away from that hospital. Now I know the horrifying reason why. In a small town in the boot of Louisiana, there's an old abandoned hospital at the edge of the bayou that has always fascinated me and my friends. Growing up, we'd often hear stories about the eerie lights that flickered in the windows at night, and the strange noises that echoed through the empty halls. The older kids would tell us about the ghostly figures they'd seen and the unexplained occurrences they'd experienced. Naturally, our curiosity grew over the years. One humid summer evening, after a particularly uneventful day, we gathered at my friend Jake's house. We were bored and looking for something exciting to do. The conversation inevitably turned to the old hospital. We had talked about exploring it before, but we never had the nerve to go through with it. Tonight felt different, though. Maybe it was the oppressive heat or the thrill of the unknown, but we finally decided to take the plunge. We spent the next hour gathering supplies. Flashlights, extra batteries, and a couple of old walkie-talkies Jake's dad had lying around. We even packed some snacks, just in case we ended up staying longer than planned. As we prepared, the excitement and nervous energy among us grew. By the time we were ready to leave, it was already dusk. The walk to the hospital was a mix of nervous laughter and whispered speculations about what we might find. The path took us through thick woods and overgrown trails, the sounds of the bayou creating an eerie soundtrack to our journey. As we approached the hospital, the sight of the crumbling building standing against the twilight sky sent shivers down my spine. The entrance was blocked by a rusty chain-link fence, but we found a section that had been cut open, probably by previous explorers. We squeezed through and stood at the entrance, our flashlights casting long shadows on the cracked pavement. Taking a deep breath, we pushed open the heavy wooden door and stepped inside. The air was thick with the smell of mildew and decay, and the temperature dropped noticeably. The flashlight beams revealed peeling paint, broken furniture, and medical equipment scattered across the floor. We wandered through the dark corridors, the sounds of our footsteps seeming to be absorbed by the oppressive silence. Suddenly, we heard a faint, rhythmic tapping coming from the floor above. Our curiosity piqued, we cautiously climbed the creaking stairs. The tapping grew louder, more insistent, as if something was trying to communicate with us. We followed the sound to a room at the end of the hall, its door slightly ajar. Pushing the door open, we found ourselves in what appeared to be an old operating room. The source of the tapping was revealed, an old, rusted surgical instrument swinging back and forth, tapping against the metal table. But what really chilled us to the bone was the figure standing in the corner of the room, barely visible in the dim light. It was a doctor, or at least what looked like one, wearing a blood-stained lab coat. His eyes were hollow, and his face was twisted into a grotesque smile. We froze in terror as the figure slowly turned towards us, raising a scalpel in his hand. Without a word, we bolted from the room, racing down the stairs and out of the hospital. We didn't stop running until we were safely back in town. To this day, we swear we can still hear the tapping and see the doctor's haunting smile in our nightmares. The old hospital remains abandoned, a place where no one dares to venture after dark. Update. That night was bone-chilling. We were huddled in Jake's living room, trying to piece together what had happened at the hospital. The air was thick with tension, and every little noise made us jump. Suddenly, the temperature dropped, and the room was filled with an eerie silence. The lights flickered, and we could feel a presence in the room. Out of nowhere, the doctor appeared, his eyes glowing with an unholy light. He moved towards us with unnatural speed, his hands reaching out as if to drag us into the abyss. We could feel his icy grip closing around us, and the pain was excruciating. It felt like our very souls were being torn apart. We screamed and scrambled to get away, knocking over furniture in our desperate attempt to escape. The doctor's laughter echoed in our ears, a chilling sound that sent shivers down our spines. Just as we thought we were done for, the lights came back on, and the doctor vanished as quickly as he had appeared. We bolted out of the house, not stopping until we were far away. Our hearts were pounding, and we could hardly catch our breath. We knew we had narrowly escaped death that night, and the encounter left us more determined than ever to find a way to stop the doctor. For weeks, everything stopped. The nightmares ceased, and we began to think we were finally free from the doctor's grasp. But then, the nightmares returned with a vengeance. We would wake up with cuts and bruises all up and down our arms and legs, as if we had been attacked in our sleep. Desperate for answers, we decided to go back to the hospital to see if we could put an end to this once and for all. But then, Jake disappeared. One moment he was there, and the next he was gone, swallowed by the darkness of the hospital. I barely made it out alive, my heart racing as I fled the building. When I finally got home, I was met with a terrifying sight. Jake was waiting for me, but he wasn't the same. He wore a lab coat and held a scalpel in his hand, his eyes vacant and cold. It was as if the doctor had taken over his body, and I knew I was in more danger than ever before.